there is what we call intended abortion. Intended abortion. Now, intended abortion, this is where people say that we are not ready to become parents, or I am not ready to become a parent. What does abortion do? Is it really something that is acceptable? I know in many countries people have spoken about accepting abortion. Others have agreed that you can kill the baby even immediately after birth, 24 hours, others 72 hours. So they decide when to kill the human being and when to keep the human being. So it is not now the responsibility of God to keep children, to keep life. It is actually now human beings who are deciding whether they want to keep life or not. Now, let us look at a few people in the Bible and see whether really life is important to God even before someone is born. So I will start, for example, with a reading from Psalms. Psalms 139, I think, is known to most people. Psalms 139, 139 verse 14. Something that so many, I know there are many people who have been able to read that Psalms. It is a beautiful psalm, but actually it tells us how much God loved us even before we ourselves were born. Before we ourselves were born. So it says, I praise you so wonderfully, you made me wonderful are your works. My very self you knew. My bones were not hidden from you when I was being made in secret, fashioned as in the depths of the earth. Your eyes foresaw my actions. In your book all are written down. My days were shaped before one came to being. So what the psalmist is telling us is that he will go on to praising the Lord the rest of his life. But the reason why he's doing this is because he understands that even when he himself was not born, God the Father knew him. And he even wrote his days, all his days in his book. That means God had already destined a certain plan for you. And of course, it's the plan that is very clear in the book of Jeremiah, chapter 11, verses 29. It says that God has the good plans for us. And so that's why the psalmist is saying that God saw everything. Even when your bones were being formed, they were seen in the eyes of God. And so what that means is a human life is essential, is life from conception. All the way, even before conception anyway, God still has you in the mind. And so it's essential to actually realize that we need to preserve life through and through. Let's also hear what Jeremiah says. Jeremiah tells us something also very important in Jeremiah chapter 1 verses 5. So Jeremiah 1 verse 5 tells us, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I dedicated you a prophet to the nations. I appointed you. What God is saying that imagine He's appointing you before you're born. We appoint only people who are living. But in this case, God appointed you and me even before we were born. That tells you then God values life. And if you read Judges, for example, in this case, Judges chapter 13 verse 5, where God again is giving instructions to the mother of Samson and saying, this son, you should never drink wine and should never touch his head with a razor because he will deliver the people of Israel. He is already set apart for the work of God. And so that clearly tells us that all of us are already in the mind of God, and therefore life needs to be protected, needs to be, preserved through and through in the womb, whatever the challenges. I was watching Renewal Ministries in America, and there's an auxiliary bishop who was giving a testimony, and he was saying that when he was conceived, when he was, I think, in 21 weeks in the mother's womb, the water broke. And he went to the doctor, said, no, I can't continue helping you because you have to take out this baby. Otherwise, the baby will come with so many deformities if the baby survives. But then the mother said, no, I want to change a doctor. And they changed the doctor. And after changing the doctor, the bishop was born. And when he was born, the mother says that this son of mine must be in the mind of God, and God must be having a great plan to have kept him. Imagine water breaking at 21 weeks. And then the boy survived through, and he became now a bishop who is really touching the lives of many people today. So what we are saying is life is really important. Sometimes you may think maybe, people like St. Paul and Saul, we know him as Saul before conversion. So if you look at Saul, you may think actually this guy, he was lost, so he was not in the plan of God. The Catechism of the Catholic Church tells us that life is really sacred and precious and must be protected. And therefore, when we try to go against that, these children are born, if they survive, they are born with woundedness, because they were already rejected even before they themselves were born. And how many times have I met parents who bring their children and they tell me, Silas, help me. My daughter does not love me. Help me. My son does not love me. We have tried to do everything. We have taken to them best schools, and they still say that they feel rejected. We don't like them. They don't belong. And actually, when I asked the mother what was happening when the child was in the womb, and one of the things they say is that, I got the child when I was in high school. And so my mom told me to go and abort the baby. But when I went to the doctor said, no, I am too young to abort the baby, and anything can go wrong, and I lose my fertility or whatever ability to give birth to babies. So I would rather preserve this baby and later on go back to school. And so they listen to the advice of the doctor, or the advice of a priest, or the advice of a catechist, or the advice of a psychologist who is life-oriented, and so will support you.